our final two speakers. Many of us have had the pleasure of being at sessions where Dr. Pletcher or Dr. Chopra have had the opportunity to speak. Do we have Dr. Chopra with us?
I'm here. Can you hear me and see me?
I can see you. Oh, there you are. Much better. So welcome both of you. For the audience, if you have had the pleasure to see these two speakers, just thought leaders within the industry, banter back and forth and provide their viewpoints, we've asked them to wrap up the day for us with the final call to action. And so with that, I'll just share a short bio for anyone who's not had the pleasure. Dr. Tim Pletcher is the Executive Director of the Michigan Health Information Networks and also the Executive Officer for the Interoperability Institute. He's an adjunct research investigator with the Learning Health Sciences at the University of Michigan. He frequently presents at regional and national topics across health informatics, advanced analytics, data science, and learning health systems. His doctorate is in health administration. And then we have Anish Chopra, the president of CareJourney, an open data membership service building trusted, transparent rating systems for physicians, networks, facilities, and markets to move value. He served as the first United States Chief Technology Officer under President Obama from 2009 to 2012, and in 2014 authored The Innovation State, How New Technologies Can Transform Government. Dr. Chopra is board certified in healthcare from the Healthcare Cost Institute from New Jersey and has an MPP from the Harvard Kennedy School and a BA from Johns Hopkins University. With that, I will turn it over to our final speakers to share with us some insights about e-consent.
Cool. Well, hey, I just want to say thank you to everybody who spoke today. I know I got to kick us off. What an amazing day that we had. I think we've covered the gamut. So if somebody didn't get something out of today's events, they must have turned off their camera or their phone for a little while, because I think we heard standards. I think we heard the human element of all this, which I thought was really excellent. And we heard a lot about sort of technology and sort of how there's so much going on across the country and how passionate people are who are working in this space, some of whom have been working in this space for many years. And I think as we come into the action agenda component here, one of the interesting things is, hey, now what? There's a lot cooking. There's a lot of pieces. COVID's made sure, particularly for the advanced care planning component of this, that there's a sense of urgency. And just to reiterate what I said this morning, 21st Century Cures Act has really put in motion a guarantee that patients are going to get their data in their own hands, okay? But what the corollary to that is, it's creating an expectation that they are going to be able to express their preferences and their choices back to the system, and the system will honor those. So I think we have a really wonderful space that needs some smart people to think through. And I know of no one smarter or who's thought an awful lot about this than Anish. So I'll toss it to you, Anish. Where do you think our energy is well spent, just sort of in general right now, as we tackle the e-consent through advanced care planning space? Where should we put our feet down when we take our next steps?
I'm going to describe that briefly now, and then I'll put it in context. I think we have a 2-year window, Tim, where we have the conceptual rights, and then the mechanics as to how that particular document is surfaced is still an open debate in terms of the regulatory framework and the standards development effort. So we've got 2 years to get the community to rally around an approach that I think could, if we get consensus, can scale. So that's the good news. We're in the proverbial end game on closing these technical gaps, but we're going to have to swim together, and we're going to have to reach consensus. A little bit of personal history. I was in state government before I went to the Obama administration. I was Virginia's Secretary of Technology, and we had a very bitterly divided legislature. Democratically elected, a Democrat in the governor's mansion, my boss, Governor Tim Kaine, and a Republican-led House of Delegates and State Senate. And so we were always grappling with issues on sort of partisan, divided by partisanship. Shocking. However, in 2008, there had been massive bipartisan consensus that we should establish within the state's health department a consumer-focused advanced care directives registry that would be a service that would be accessible to read and write for every Virginian. And I remember vividly the way bills, die, even with bipartisanship, is if there's a price tag associated with the bill. And so I get the call from a friendly legislator. He says, "Look, the budget office just came back and said this thing's going to cost a lot of money. I don't know if I can get consensus on this thing happening if we're going to have to spend. So how can we make our way through this?" And I said, "You know what? Put it down as a $0 public-private partnership, and we'll figure it out." So the legislature unanimously voted for it, and Virginia embarked on a public-private partnership model that now, through our state HIE, does allow for individuals to upload and then to share their advanced care directive. My other mentor, Senator Mark Warner, championed federal legislation and eventually policy that allowed for the reimbursement of discussions by physicians and patients around their goals. And so I'm on team advanced care directives for everyone and the system to react to it. And I've been that way for years, and I'm so grateful for the leadership. Thanks for hosting this session and for convening this important dialogue. Now let's peel the onion back a little bit and why I'm optimistic that we have action in the next 2 years. Point number one, CMS is actually generating more demand for physicians to engage in a conversation about advanced directives with their patients. Not only have they reimbursed, but now it's becoming more and more of a quality measure within alternative payment models. For half the country, we're enrolling in a new program called Primary Care First and other models like it, where this is a critical benchmarking statistic of quality to see whether or not a physician is engaging with patients in this way. That's good news. It's creating more systematic response to engaging patients on these tough questions and to have that information permeate. Number two, as I mentioned, we have this general principle that the entire health record for a patient, inclusive of all document types, including this advanced care directive, must be made available under the term EHI export. Now, I don't know how much, Tim, we got into some of the mechanics of that today, and forgive me if this is in the weeds, but it is an important compromise. We in the Obama administration reached industry consensus to name a dozen fields, your blood pressure, your meds list, your problem list, naming those items as discrete, structured data elements that we were going to share across the networks. Documents, notes, they fell under this category of sort of other. And so we've had this debate about how quickly can we get the rest of the record structured and discoverable for sharing. So we are in a scenario where we're racing against sort of two dynamics. The structured data list, the US CDI, will grow. There is a section in there around care plan, okay? It may not meet the technical definition of an advanced care plan, but it's there. So systems are tooling for that kind of sharing, but we're gonna have a pretty big documentation gap. We also have this backstop that by 2023, so 2 years, we're gonna have full EHI export, whatever it is, in a machine readable format. So our window of opportunity for action is how can we get this important document identifiable for consumers to query. And if they come through a consumer app, that the app can query, or if they're using e-consent to query for it across the network, that they can get access to it. Being able to connect this particular document and having it surface and discoverable, that's the race. Will it show up in the full EHI dump? Will it be discrete? We have had standards consensus around this. We've got to now find a way to link the regulatory action, the demand signal from providers who are increasingly taking financial risk, engaging with their EHR platforms to sort of facilitate this, and then this amorphous consumer right that we want to put more meat on. That to me is the opportunity, Tim. And I don't know who sets the table to reach industry consensus. I presume Mary might be a great partner in this cause. Mary, I don't know if you want to sign up for this, but if this is a day of action, the action is, can we have a convening body help to close these gaps so that we can reach consensus and scale?
Absolutely, and I appreciate outlining some of those opportunities in the call for action. Question though, who should be sitting at the table? Who are the important key thought leaders? We heard from tool vendors and standards organizations, from a lot of different folks and perspectives throughout the day. What are some of your insights on that?
Well, obviously the first and most important constituent would be patient groups, patients who are struggling. And often it's the caregivers who are managing these documents that are grappling with them. And so having real world feedback about the pain and difficulty of, hey, we filled that out. Why doesn't the doctor know about it? And why are they not reacting to it? I think that is an important voice, and more caregiver associations may be a very thoughtful way to get that real world experience in the discussion. Number one. Number two, I think this now that we have quality measures holding certain physician groups at risk, I think there is a group of people who are motivated to get more of their patients to fill out a directive, to use it and track it. And so that is a smaller universe than every doctor in America. And so I think a coalition of risk-bearing physicians or physician networks who are motivated, maybe they're motivated in general, but they're particularly motivated because it's a quality measure that they're being held against. That is a constituency that would describe their workflow. Hey, I want to do this. I asked the patient, they think they did it. They don't know where it was. How do we find it? What's going on? And so there's, I think, a voice there. I do think that to the extent that this is a yin to the yang, if they're ultimately stored and maintained in EHRs, if that's the source that we're going to be querying, then we need the apps that are going to be querying that source to sort of speak about how hard or easy it is to do so. And I think if we get that group largely in agreement as to the how, the last mile question is how can we get EHR vendor consensus on tagging, if you will, these documents in a certain way so that they can be discoverable through their FHIR servers and other regulated endpoints. And so I think those may be the folks that showed up today. I'm mindful that there are, I've seen vendors and others that are at this. Where we often get into difficulty is when vendor A talking to EHR C, absent the particular patient or physician customer that's trying to make this thing happen, is making a general call for connectivity and has friction. So I think there's a chance to try to close that loop with who is the health system or the health network that really wants to drive the adoption, who represents the consumer's designated apps, how might we demonstrate early evidence, and then iterate to show people that the water is warm, the systems can work, it won't break the bank, and we can move forward. That I think is the table that needs to be set. It's the early adopters who are the testers, real world testers of the sort of API-based standards to drive adoption and use, in my opinion.
Yeah. So how do you see some of the discovery? Like, how do we find them? What if the EHRs aren't the source, which is often the case? There's sort of a thread that I think is not being fully expressed yet. It came up a couple times, but it was this idea of a document versus something computable. So not discrete elements, but like a rule, like a computable rule that we could move around. And there's a lot of work.
Oh, that's a powerful idea. Right. I see.
And so
these are my rules. Yeah, got it.
Yeah. So instead of really thinking of it as a document-centric concept where things are kind of static, begin to really express the patient's choices in the form of computable knowledge or computable rules, right?
Okay. Well, now you're taking me.
I know where we're going, but also practices that an organization has also in a computable way to begin to get us on a journey where a lot of these things can automatically happen.
Yeah, Tim, I'll go a different direction on that because I think that's a very clever idea. I hadn't even thought about it. So let me react. Not in a rule, but I'm involved in the Argonaut project, which is the standards for the EHR consensus. 2 years ago, the community of EHR leaders said, we want to pursue clinical decision support hooks. The idea that natively in the EHR, there may be decision support that can be externally sourced that helps guide actions within the practice or within the visit. What you're describing, which I think is a very powerful idea, is the consumer may bring their decision support into the clinic visit, okay? And the idea is it's going to run in the background. So while they're having a conversation with the physician and they're taking orders or taking action, the actions get screened against the consumer's decision support engine, the rules, as you say, and the constraints help shape what it is that the physician or the clinician in this case may pursue. I'm brainstorming on this one, Tim, but that one is less about a new standard and more about building a bunch of apps that are leveraging the CDS Hooks emerging standard that will be adopted shortly, that are engineered to the needs of the consumer. Boy, what a really powerful idea. I don't know if that's where you were taking me, but I think
I'm thinking CDS Hooks and CQL in sort of the connection layer for quality measures that you started with, CDS Hooks, and this idea of getting away from documents that are static to computable that start to embed better in the workflow, which is some of our other groups that spoke today, BPM Plus, et cetera, are about kind of those connections and that automation. One of the things that is still missing from the equation is where do we go to find our way to know who has information and who doesn't. It's sort of like the directory of directories discussion that happens elsewhere. I mean, it would seem to me that there's a place someplace for someone to start saying, we're going to start gluing things together here and connect it from the top down, or make the mesh, if you will, so you can traverse it.
Or it's a flavor of acres where repositories post the roster and share the roster. So if you ping the network, oh, I happen to be in this roster, let me know I'm here. I don't know if that's a thing, but that could be a thing. And that may be an easy way to tap the networks to say, hey, I'm a repository of many advanced directives, and I'd like to register on the network. Here's my roster. I don't know if that's a functional thing that happens today. In Virginia, the state health department governs this, and so there's a role of government, which is, one could query this. You query one location. Now that may not be the right. I don't know. I don't want to get into the. I don't know if that was a good idea or a bad idea, but that's the state law in Virginia. So it's not the only place that stores a directive, but it's an option for the consumer. I don't know. I think you're so we're sort of triangulating on three areas that need action. One is consumers have choice as to where they store their directives. Maybe it's through a physician who happens to store it either in their EHR or in some other asset. So one could begin the process of registering, hey, in the HIE networks, we are a node for this this class type of document. And that, so there could be a set of activities around kind of raising your hand to say, I want to register this as an endpoint for directives. I think the interoperability question is more, it's already somewhere, I know where it is, I want to retrieve it. So discovery is one, now the active of retrieval, and then action, I think, is where the rules were coming in. How do I ensure that my wishes are honored? And maybe that's done, you know, through a consumer sort of fiduciary, but it also could be something done by networks that say, we're going to honor your wishes, and we'll make sure no matter which doctor you see in the network, we're going to track these things and ensure adherence to your wishes, which may be another way to value add for the clinical networks. So you've described them in three different technical needs: certification, discovery of endpoint, the query response for the individual document, and then the executable code that can be run to validate that the care I'm getting meets the requirement. I think all three of those things are in our hands for action over the next 2 years. So who's on team CDS hooks, who's on team discovery acres, and who's on team fetch and retrieve this particular document amongst the document search standards? By the way, you can have machine readable documents. When I say document, I don't mean it's a scanned TIFF image. I think it could be a computable document. Anyway, I'm spitballing on your question, but that's,
yeah, no,
those are the
great. I think, Mary, that's pretty good framing for us. I know you're going to get the hook out and pull us off. So
absolutely. So Dr. Pledger, Dr. Chopra, always a pleasure. I want to thank you for sharing your comments and for helping to frame up really the goal of this day, which is how do we bring the community and all these different viewpoints and stakeholders together towards a plan of action. So thank you so much. It was perfect to tee up that plan of action